A very warm welcome back. We're in Sandton today, and latest in the series of New Age business briefings brought to you by the SABC. Today, very kindly sponsored by Transnet, and we're talking about racism. And it is interesting because in the last few weeks, Twitter has gone mad over this conversation. People in responding to some of the comments that have been made by people like Penny Sparrow. And I've just got a tweet here from someone who says, "Justice for all, only catching up to this exhausted topic about racism. Oh dear, changing the channel." Now, and I guess there is a danger that we get exhausted by this, and yet as a conversation, as you said, we need to have more than ever.
You see, how we got where we are is very important, but more important is how do we move ahead. And if we're not prepared to work on building a non-racial society and be committed to it, and we get exhausted about it, therefore there is something wrong with us as a nation. Because I think Prof made a very important point. In the 50s, 60s, the United States was having a problem in changing what was called the South, which was very racist. And until they confronted that issue, they couldn't engage with it. We should plunge and engage with the issue and say to each other, we are South Africans, we must build a nation, somebody must be able to let go, and we must allow ourselves to be part of building. You know, one of the issues that is a problem is that if we are not going into details about this, we may relegate the debate into thinking that if you can dispossess every white person in South Africa and redistribute everything to black South Africans, we have resolved the problem. That is not the issue. The issue is that we must build a prosperous South Africa where we can actually benefit, all of us have access to issues. Access is the starting point. Then development is a process of developing from there. For example, this debate about land, that these small emerging farmers will harm food security, is a racist debate, because it means you must not have access because dispossession de-skilled you and destroy a relationship with the land. But access to land is the beginning. Then you get skilled when you have access to it. So we must deal with it in practical terms and deal with the issues frontally.
Prof, you talked earlier on about the quality of conversation that we're having, and I get a sense, and I'm just observing, just watching this thing unfold, and I'm getting a sense that perhaps the loudest voices are the ones that are being heard, and that maybe there are some other voices that are now actually just too afraid to talk. How much of a challenge is it going to be for us if not everybody is allowed to talk? Because people are scared now that if they say anything and it's misunderstood, misinterpreted, they're going to get slayed on Twitter.
It's really unfortunate. We've seen a retreat in some ways of the intellectuals, particularly the university intellectuals in the last 20 years. No disrespect to Pinky, but the academics have not come and pronounced, if you like, on these questions. And one of the most important things that we've come to learn in the academy, Pinky raised it, is that we've discovered since 1960 that human beings don't carry racial genes. It's an extraordinary thing to learn, that you aren't born with this capacity to speak isiXhosa. You learn it. You know, you aren't born with this capacity to be able to run faster than another person, simply because of what you look like. And so the science here, the science of race, is the missing ingredient here in this particular discussion. And that science is telling us that human beings, in terms of their genetic makeup, are almost indistinguishable from one another. The fact that I look different to you has no bearing on what is going on inside of my head. Everything that is going on inside of my head, I've been taught. and I've been taught rubbish.
Right. Kelly, do white people like black people?
Very much. Well, if we didn't like black people, we would have left the country, and a large majority of us have decided to stay here and to make a future. And I enjoy sitting next to Pinky, even if she disagrees with me profoundly.
So, I mean, help me understand, because there was some research that came out end of last year. I think it was the same research document that you had, and that 47% of white people in South Africa did not believe that apartheid was a crime against humanity. How can we have such a startling number? Do you think it was a crime against humanity?
No, I don't agree with that statement, and I know Gwede would take me on the issue. I think there were serious mistakes made by the fact that people's dignity was infringed upon. But I think what happens in this debate, and why people withdraw and get fed up with the debate, is because continuously in this debate there's a perception created, or the debate is there's perpetrators and the victims, and continuously white people are being portrayed as the perpetrators, black people are being portrayed as the victims, and the whole debate is about that. And there's no nuance to say, well, let's just look at some other instances. For instance, if you look at during the communism, which was an ANC policy, 80 million people died across the globe, which is also a crime against humanity. But this kind of statement I'm making is this kind of tit for tat, when you continuously want to create a perpetrator and a victim. What we are saying to move forward, as an Afrikaner, I see myself rather as an Afrikaner than a white person. We want to make a contribution in this country, and we want to foster mutual recognition and respect amongst all communities. Because of the infringement of the dignity of people in the past, we see that there's a huge poverty problem in the country, and that is something that needs to be addressed. But it won't be addressed by continuing a debate on a victim-perpetrator basis. It will say, how can we solve this? And we would say that we should focus on the education system. I'm glad that the Minister of Education is here this morning. And if you look at the matric results, in township schools and in rural schools get the worst results. In the suburb schools, people are doing well. And there are certain reasons for that. It's not only apartheid, it's the fact that people in the suburb schools get education in their mother tongue. That is something that needs to be built out. And it's a fact that the teachers attend schools in suburb schools, and in many township schools, teachers don't just pitch up. And you have the South African Democratic Teachers Union that protect teachers that don't pitch up. So if we say we want to eradicate inequalities, we must get discipline in schools, break the power of unions that protect teachers that don't do their work, and make sure that we equip young black people to participate in the economy.
This is a conversation I'm sure we're definitely going to get a response, but your responses to what you've heard so far?
Kali, we need to start from, and I'm sure even every aspect of trying to find a solution in this world requires that we start from the bottom. Basics. And the basics is, this notion that there's a perpetrator and a victim is a fact. White people, especially in South Africa, we have colonization then apartheid. Institutionalized, structural, we know this. What we require is for you and your institution to say, we accept this. How do we move forward? I mean, you come up with very good ideas, but they're way beyond just dealing with the mind. The mind of somebody who thinks they're so superior as to get onto Twitter or social media and say the things that they say, How do you deconstruct this mind before we even talk about SABC teachers? This is just symptoms of mental issues that we need to work on. And we require that white people in this country accept this as really. And you could be actually somebody who could spearhead this, to say, look, we accept this. This is it's a belief system. How do we change it? How do we make sure that a child today, we have kids from technicons. You would know because I've contacted you about this young man who I took to the Equality Court and the Human Rights Commission. A little boy who can call us kafirs, who wants to shoot us, who wants to kill us. I mean, he's at university. He was born in the 90s. How do you change this kid? How do you make sure that this kid sees me, firstly, as older than him? Secondly, understands my culture and how we should relate. And how do we make sure that he never thinks this way of me? Now, you speak about education. The education system needs to be overhauled. We need to have an education system that puts blacks as part of, their role in changing, in being part of society. We need to change the belief system. You hear white people on Twitter saying, if we were not here, you'd be in mud huts. Rubbish. We need to build a society in which our education system teaches, the dignity, bestows the dignity of black people in their role in society. And you would know that civilization, for example, started in Egypt. Now we have this erasure of everything that Africans did. We need to go back in Dademadashe. We need to build an education system that puts black people and Africans in the heart of civilization and bestows our dignity. We cannot have people like telling us about how we would still be in huts. We had architects during civilization. Yes. We had, it was all happening. Africans were doing things until colonization came.
I'm going to move us on because of time, but I know you're going to comment, and as you comment, Firstborn Rush says, Peter Ndoro, the ongoing racism today is a direct result of the CODESA negotiations where the ANC bent over backwards for the sake of peace.
No. That narrative is a narrative that is coming from the extremes. Let me tell you why is that the case. Segregation is not an advent of CODESA. Apartheid, which was the highest point of it, is not a product of CODESA. It was a system that actually created perpetrators and victims. It deprived black people access to anything. It subjugated them. And therefore, we cannot just wake up today and say there are no perpetrators and there are no victims. There are perpetrators and there are victims because economic power relations remain distorted in favor of white South Africans. And that reality should be confronted, because if it's not confronted, we'll theorize and say there are no perpetrators and there are no victims. There are many perpetrators and many victims. We had a discussion with farmers one day. One farmer stand up and say, this farm is too small for a white farmer, but it's too big for a black farmer. And again, it's in the mind. It's in the mind. The stereotype is the subconscious mind of an individual, where somebody may say no one non-racialism, but deep down in the head still believe that I'm superior, we must do a favor. You see, Kali, you are painting a picture of suburb schools and township schools, and you say you want to blame SATU for that. What you will refuse to accept is that actually when Verwoerd took education of black people from the mission schools, they had one objective only, to create an inferior population of black South Africans. And we'll have to work on it to change it. It's a process, it's not an event, and we must be together in actually dealing with that process and changing the reality that confronts us.
Okay, all right, let's go to the floor now, and I'm still monitoring Twitter for you. Let's go to table number 10, where we'll find Tabang Mabuza. Table number 10.
My name is Tabang. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm part of a network of young people across SA with Drive Change. And my question is more, how do we then start to bring in young people to start playing a critical role in addressing this scourge. Now, I was surprised to be watching a show by Felicia in 1990-something, and they were speaking of racism. And fast forward 10 years later, we're still engaging on such an issue. Chances are 15 years from now, we would still be conversating about such an issue. I think we as important as conversations are, we need to begin at looking at best ways in which we can then begin as all races to begin collaborating and working amongst each other. So what we've done as young people, we've created WhatsApp webinars where we begin to engage and have conversations on WhatsApp every Tuesday in addressing issues of racism, issues of how do we begin to collaborate. I think we need to move from a society where we are limited to social media armchair critics, but to exploring best ways in which how do we then begin to move forward and engage on issues that take us forward as a country and as people in working together. I thank you.
Okay, so how do young people get involved in this conversation? It's you know, when I was at school, I was in a multiracial school, and what I found, which was quite interesting, is that we all sort of got on in class, but as soon as the school holidays came, we disappeared and we were in different worlds, and then we only saw each other again when we came back to school, and then we carry on, we pretend we are integrated and we're together, and then you go to the workplace, we work together, we're busy on an audit together, and then when it goes for drinks afterwards, we go into these separate worlds again. So how do we, I guess integration is the story, isn't it? I mean, how do we integrate our society to become one society, much like the Brazilians have been able to do?
Now, sometimes we use wrong examples. Brazil is the worst country you can compare to. Yes, okay. Because blacks in Brazil are treated worse than we are treated.
Wow.
I can tell you that they do not exist. That's why if you go to their parliament, you hardly find a black person in Brazilian parliament.
But they celebrate Pele.
Go and check it. Go and check it. I've been there 3 times, checked it, compared the situation. But what is important is, for young people, is that they must come out and be part of the debate and come up with ideas. And the advantage they will have is that, which is also a disadvantage, they will not have a sense of how bad apartheid was. You know, I talked to young mine workers a few weeks ago, and all of them were shocked when I told them that a blasting certificate was given to a black man for the first time in 1989. And before that, it was kept for a scheduled person. They said, how did that happen? And I tell them that solidarity means workers in organized a national strike when a blasting certificate was given to a colored man in Oakip in 1979. Now, they don't have that detail, so they can actually bring the experience they have at school and have the debate, because if they're not part of the debate, the future is going to be weak. They are embodiment of the future, and they must come to the fore and engage in the debate. But what they should avoid is to think that they can use anarchy to correct what was done. You know what was done? Many people blame what happened in 1994 are people who have no picture of what happened before 1994. And therefore they say, but you sold out in this and that and that. We have political power. How do we use it to change society? But in doing so, we must involve that society.
All right. Kelly, this question is going to be for you, and it comes from table number 12. Is that Dorzan Williams? If I can't read your first name, if you could just correct it for me.
Hi, yeah, my name is Donovan Williams.
Okay.
And I've got very bad handwriting. My question, yes, is directed to Kali. And he boldly claimed that he's an Afrikaner, firstly, as well as we get this conversation where you almost have the 3 other panelists pleading with him to recognize racism. and it's a bit sad, together with that he leads an organization called AfriForum, which to me is part of the problem. Its very existence mitigates against building non-racialism or non-racial society and social cohesion, because it leads on this lager mentality that created apartheid and continues to act on behalf of a community that further divides us. So AfriForum itself, why should it exist? Isn't it part of the problem and not really part of the solution, particularly with a program and agenda?
All right, before he answers, I just want to ask you, are we saying that specific groups, minority interest groups shouldn't be allowed to exist on their own?
Now, I think cultural groups should, but AfriForum is not a cultural group. It's a rights group. It pushes forward on rights for a particular community, like it is a beleaguered community, like it is a victimized community.
Okay, all right. Kelly?
I think the real problem that we have in the country is a lack of tolerance towards diversity, towards different views. As you've heard just now in the question, the fact that we sometimes have differing views, it creates an impression that we are part of the problem. Democracy is built by differing views, taking part in a public debate, so that we will defend. The fact is also, it actually shows people's lack of knowledge. If you go and read through AfriForum's documents and our statements, I will challenge anybody to come and bring me one racist statement that was made by us. You will see words such as we should foster mutual recognition and respect amongst communities. You would see instances where we not only condemn racism by black people, you would see many statements where we condemn racism by white people. So I think if we want to solve the problem in the country, we need more organizations such as ours. And if I can just mention one thing, the thing that we take quite strongly, when the president said all the country's problems started when Jan van Riebeeck came, he actually said the problem in this country are whites in general and Africans in particular, if I can play with the ANC way that they use those words. And that is an infringement on my children's dignity, because it says you are the problem in this country. But we always say if we fight that and you get angry about it, we have a right to take an issue with that. But in the same sense, then we must also have an issue with Penny Sparrow and condemn the kind of stupid statements and views to think of black people as apes. So in a sense, our organization, and I stand with that, we take a middle road to say we condemn it on all ways, and the problem is that not everybody does that.
The question might be, why do you need to exist? Are there not enough institutions to help you with your cause, Human Rights Council and so on and so forth, that you can go to and say, listen, this is what's happened to me, this is what's happened to us, fix it? Are you saying you have no faith in them? Why do you need to exist as this little organization on the side?
Well, the fact is we've lodged many complaints with the Human Rights Commission about racist statements made, even threats to our staff made by certain radical blacks, and the vast majority of black people don't do this. But then the Human Rights Commission simply don't investigate it. But when Penny Sparrow's issue came to the fore, they on themselves the next day said that they would investigate it even before the ANC laid a charge.
Okay.
I'm not saying that they shouldn't investigate Penny Sparrow on their own. That's their job. They should have done it on the same day. But then they should not ignore these other issues. But we need a situation. If there's at higher education, when there's a meeting of students, people say there should be no room for Afrikaans at universities, which the students said. There should be somebody to say, well, we believe that's wrong, and that is the role we are playing within the framework of the law, peaceful, and that should be appreciated.
I have to take a quick break, but I know, Mrs. Pinky, you wrote an interesting article about some of these institutions and their ability or lack thereof to deal with some of these cases. Ken Sinclair comes to mind. We'll come back to you on that after this break. Stay with us.